What's up guys, Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, we are talking how to target the biggest fish of your life from shore. It doesn't matter if you're a pond fisherman or shore-based lake fisherman. Today's video, we're talking baits, locations, and how you can target the biggest fish during this fall into winter transition. Let's go. So just last video, Matt did an awesome job, an in-depth video on how you can target the biggest fish in your fishery. Today's video is gonna kind of piggyback off that, but it's gonna be more based towards this shore-based or bank fishing angler. If you guys have not watched that video, I highly recommend it. A lot of great information. I will kind of skim over it in today's video, a lot of great information. So if you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link to it right up here and down below in the video description. But today's video, we're talking about how to target the biggest fish in your fishery. It doesn't matter if it's a pond or a lake, but how to target the biggest fish in your fishery, how to figure out the type of fishery you have, how to properly pick the locations. We're covering all of that. Let's get started. Now, a lot of you guys get discouraged when you talk about shore fishing or bank fishing. And I grew up a shore fisherman. I didn't get my first boat until I was older in life, right? I didn't grow up with a bass boat. I didn't have anybody that had a bass boat or a boat at all. So I did almost all of my fishing from the shoreline or from a kayak or float tubes, things like that. So don't get discouraged, because there are a lot of benefits, believe it or not, to being a shore-based fisherman, a bank fisherman. Number one, element of surprise. When these guys are zipping around in their big bass boats, their kayaks, whatever they may be in, but they're zipping around, their big motor, their trolling motor, the sonar pinging off their transducer, all of those things are not natural. When you are truly hunting, searching after the biggest fish in your fishery, the element of surprise is key. And being from shore, it puts a lot of the favor in your court. Number two, stability. When you're drifting around in a boat or a kayak or something floating, you have to deal with wind, you have to deal with spot lock, trolling motor, all that stuff. It doesn't get much more stable than solid ground or a dock, you know, so you don't have to worry about all the other stuff. You could pick your cast and fish those casts very, very methodically and effectively. You don't have to worry about stability or floating off of your spot. The other key thing that shore-based fishermen have, another benefit, is going to be you present baits. Might be the same bait that people from a boat or fishermen from a boat are using, but you get to present them in a way, an angle. You get to make casts that they don't get to make. From shore, you get to fish the inside of a grass line. You get to fish a bait truly uphill, parallel to shoreline. All those things you can't do from a boat, you can do from shore. So first, we're gonna break it down into lakes and ponds. We'll kind of start off with lakes. We'll break down the lakes, how you as a shore-based fisherman, how you as a bank fisherman can pick the best spots on the lake to truly target those giants. And then we'll jump over to ponds, larger ponds, smaller ponds, kind of wrap it up there. But let's start off with lakes. Bank fishermen from the lakes. There are a lot of tools that you guys can use these days to really help put the odds in your favor to catch these big fish. Number one is the computer. Google Earth, Navionics, different mapping programs. You can sit down and pick the best spots on the entire lake. You can go through Google Earth, you can go through previous pictures, see where those points go as the water drops down. You can see what hard pieces of structure might be holding the biggest fish. So do your research from home. But lake fishermen, we got to decide or figure out, what type of fishery do you have? What types of fish are you targeting? Are you targeting big trout and kokanee eaters, or are you targeting shad and shallow bluegill eaters? You know, Matt, like I said, did a great job explaining that in his last video, so I'm not going to kind of go over all of that, but just know you have to figure out the type of fish that you are chasing. If you're chasing those trout and kokanee eaters, you're gonna fish a different time and different baits than you would if you're fishing those shallow fish. So let's start off with those fish, the trout and kokanee eaters, those open water fish, because My PB was a 15, and I caught it on an 8-inch Huddleston. It was a trout eater. Some of the biggest fish in the world are trout eaters, and they just get big and fat. And to effectively target them from shore, we're going to talk about some key baits. But first, let's talk about things you need to know. Those fish are sight feeders. The best way I can describe this, or the best picture I can paint, is think about a great white shark and a sea lion or a seal. You know, we've all seen those videos on National Geographic, Discovery Channel. Those fish, those shark, they sit out deep and they wait for those seals, those sea lions to come over them, and they use their silhouette, right? We've seen where they have the cardboard cutouts. They use that silhouette up against the surface to ambush those fish. Big bass do the same thing with trout and kokanee. They sit below them out in open water, and they wait for those fish to swim over them, and they ambush them. Just like shallow fish use the shoreline or hard structure as something to pin that bait up against, those big bass suspend and they pin those fish up against the surface, and that is how they target those fish. So they need a couple things in their favor. They need light. So the best time to target those fish is when the sun is high, the water is clear, they have a lot of visibility, they can see a long ways, and they can really effectively target those fish in open water. Now, baits for those fish. Number one is going to be a soft swim bait. You know, in Matt's video, he talked about how those fish are up in the water column and they are targeting, they are looking to hunt those kokanee and trout. As the light gets low, as the water maybe gets dingy, they sink to bottom. But in prime conditions, clear water, high sun, you're going to want to be throwing some kind of soft plastic swim bait, either the Savage Gear, 8-inch Huddleston, something you're going to cast out, count it down, you know, 10, 15 feet under the surface, and just reel it back. Just looking like a dumb, easy meal, something that's suspended out there. As far as the Huddlestons, I like to throw the ROF 5. It has to do with how fast the bait sinks. I don't throw a 12 or a 16 on bottom. I throw a 5. I can throw it out there, like I said, count it down and just reel that thing back super slow, real methodical, and that is how I caught my PB. Another bait you're going to throw is going to be some kind of big glide bait. You know, again, you're looking for big presentations, big profile in the water, something that has a lot of drawing power, and those fish can see from a long ways away. So a big glide bait, a big soft plastic, or a big topwater. This is the big, this is the Mega Dog. This is from Mega Bass. Big giant walking bait. This is one of my favorite colors. All this stuff I'll link down below in the video description. But you guys can see big profiles, big baits. As those fish are out there suspended looking to hunt, they want a big meal. As far as locations, you know, again, we're talking about the trout and kokanee eaters. As far as locations for a shore fisherman, do your research, get a good a topographical program, either Navionics, LakeMaster has an app for your phone. Look at the maps, look at the contour lines. You're going to want to fish long tapering points that have deep water access nearby, and you're going to want to fish choke points or funnels. Now, what I mean by that, if you have a huge area, right, big fish could be anywhere, but if that lake tapers down and gets really narrow and then opens back up, those fish are going to sit on either end of that choke point. All of those open water fish have to come through there. All those trout and kokanee have to come through there, so they're going to pick the area where they don't have to hunt as big of an area. These fish are big, they're smart, they're weary, they're dominant. They're going to take the best spot in the entire lake. So that choke point where all those fish have to funnel through brings those fish right to them. That is where they're going to sit. So you at home prepping for your trip, you know, as a shore fisherman, you can't just run around and fish everywhere like, you know, guys in boats, right? So you have to be very specific, very analytical, and just pick those best spots, those key spots, and you want to beat them up. You don't want to just jump from spot to spot to spot, right? If you know that is the best spot, if on the map it looks like it's the best spot in the lake, you want to fish it thoroughly. Those baits right there, those are the best baits that you can throw for those big fish out there on those points. Those key locations, like I said, the long tapering points, Presenting those baits uphill is another key factor. You know, if it's not ideal conditions, say the light's not too, you know, not high enough, it's low light, you can still catch them with a crankbait, you can catch them with a jig, those fish will pull closer to bottom. But as that sun gets high, as that light gets bright, water's clear, those fish are gonna move up in the water column and they're gonna sit there and wait to silhouette those fish. A glide bait, a big topwater, a big soft plastic are my number one baits to throw for those big fish. Now, locations again, those choke points, those funnels, and the long tapering points are going to be your best spots to pick. Now, when you're looking at a shoreline, from a shore fisherman, and you're looking at a shoreline, you're looking at a straight shoreline for a mile or so, and there's a little anomaly or a little cut or something, that is another spot that I'm going to pick out. Now, if I have a fishery that has a lot of shad or bluegill or baby crappie, those sort of things, that is where I'm going to go shallow and really target those big fish. So those open water fish, those trout and kokanee eaters are going to be on those main lake points, the deep water. The shad, bluegill, baby crappie, those shallow fish, they're going to be in those little anomalies where they can use the back of a bay, they can use the back of a cut, a creek channel to push those fish and kind of corral them in there, and they hold them just like a fence. They create a fence and they hold them, and they'll just blow up nonstop on those fish, and they will sometimes keep them pinned up for weeks. Fish are popping behind me. They will sometimes keep those fish backed in that little cut for weeks. So when you're looking at your fishery and you've determined that it is a shad lake, a bluegill lake, a shallow fishery, that is what the things you're going to look for. You're going to look for those little pockets where those fish can really corral that bait and just hammer them. With those types of fish, that's where I'm going to go with like a glide bait. I'm going to fish the inside of the grass line. I might have to downsize. Instead of going with like a Waver 200 or a Gancraft 230, I might go with like a 168, but I'm going to fish the inside grass line. Again, the benefit of being a shore fisherman is you get to fish locations that you can't fish on a boat. So you can be on the inside, fishing the inside grass line. You can be flipping the backside of the grass or behind a laydown, those types of things. So squarebill, topwater, you can go with the bigger baits, but I will typically throw a little smaller, like I said, that 168, those type of baits to really target those shallow fish. A squarebill, I mean, burning a squarebill on the inside grass line, throwing a topwater on the inside grass line. A fisherman, an angler from out on the lake cannot make those casts without coming through the grass. So you have the benefit of being on the inside and making those casts. So we talked about the lake fish, we talked about the deep fish, the locations to look for. The shallow fish, I kind of skimmed over it real quickly, but you're looking for those little anomalies, the little shallow bays, the backs of cuts where those fish can push those bait fish, those shad up into it. Trout fishermen, the big bass chasing trout and kokanee are going to be off of those main lake points. So we covered that. So now let's talk about ponds. Again, shore fishing, I like to break down ponds into two categories, like big ponds and small ponds. And there's not really a definition to it, but when I think of a big pond, I think of something that it's going to take me all day to fish. So maybe something that's like, I don't know, 10 to 20 acres, something like that. Now, if you Google it, you look at the definition of a pond versus a lake. A lake is something where it's deep enough that the light penetration cannot reach bottom. Flip side, a pond, it is shallow enough that light hits the bottom no matter where you are, no matter how deep it is, the light can hit bottom. So if it's shallow enough that light can hit bottom, that is a pond. If it is deep enough that the light cannot penetrate and hit bottom, that is a lake. So in my mind, I kind of do it by size, but that is the definition. So a large pond, I treat that just like a lake. You know, you're going to have your long, or you're going to have a bigger dam, you're going to have your long straight sections, you're going to have deeper areas, you're going to have breaks, maybe points, that sort of stuff. So you're going to fish that just like you would a lake. Fish the same baits. You typically with those bigger ponds, you can get away from the grass, so you can throw your big swim baits, you can throw your big top waters, you can throw your big glide baits. What I will switch up, I will throw a big Texas rig. I'll throw a big 10 or 12 inch worm. I will throw a big zoom lizard or a big brush hog, something like that has a lot of profile, a lot of displacement in the water to really target those bigger fish. If I'm throwing a frog, I might upsize to like the King Daddy, you know, a lot larger size. Again, it's weedless, but you're talking about a bigger profile. So again, a shore fisherman, a bank fisherman, you get to present casts, present baits that a person on a boat cannot make. Now you also have the element of surprise, right? So as you're walking down the shoreline, you can flip behind laydowns, you can fish the inside grass lines, you could fish stuff, make casts that anglers on the boat cannot make. As far as ponds, you know, take your time, really pick those key areas apart. You know, we're talking about large ponds down by the dam. That's typically the deepest part of the pond. That is where your biggest fish, your most dominant fish are gonna live. So again, you can throw the big swim baits. If it's got grass, you know, go with the weedless Texas rig stuff, but spend most of your time really picking apart those key areas, the deeper water, because those fish are dominant. They're gonna pick their place, they're gonna push all the other bass off, and they're gonna call that home. Now, shallow or small ponds, in my mind, that's something that you can walk around and fish very quickly in a day. You know, your golf course ponds or your farm ponds, something that you can fish the entire thing very quickly. You know, typically those fish, those fisheries are shallower. They're gonna have a lot more grass. So again, I'm gonna go with a frog. I'm gonna go with some kind of flip or punch bait. Just like I said a little bit ago, you can walk up, you have the element of surprise, you can walk up to the shoreline and just drop these baits in. You don't have to make big, long casts if you don't want to, but I will go weedless. Again, frog, big Texas rig baits, primarily your fish and grass. Go with your big flip baits, your big punch baits, and you will be surprised how big some of these fish get in these farm ponds. I mean, they're gigantic. I saw one that was like 16 pounds a guy caught out of a little tiny pond. But, you know, shore fishermen, bank fishermen, don't get discouraged any time of the year, especially right now. You have, like I said, so many things in your favor that boat-based anglers don't have. Again, the element of surprise, being able to present those baits at different angles, make different casts, to fish that haven't been fished for. You can get into locations that aren't even open to boats, right? Didn't even talk about that. A lot of fisheries, no motors. You have to walk in or kayak in, but you get to make casts and present baits to fish that don't typically get fished for, especially at those angles, like I said, from the boats. But you guys don't get discouraged if you're a shore-based fisherman, you're a bank fisherman, because you have a lot of benefits that maybe you didn't think about. But again, that's kind of the Cliff Notes version. I know Matt did that real in-depth video about, you know, time of day, you know, and I just kind of scratched the surface. Again, we'll go watch that video. But your pond fishermen, you know, real quickly, low light conditions. That's going to be your key time to really target those big fish. Low light, they're going to use the low light as cover to ambush those fish. You lake fishermen, they're going to use the light, the visual, the visibility to target those open water trout and kokanee. So that's kind of the two differences. Figure out the type of fishery you have. Your lake, if you're fishing for those deep fish or open water fish, or your shallow fish, shad and bluegill eaters. And then you pond fishermen, same thing. You got a big deep pond, treat it like a lake. You got a small grassy pond, fish those Texas rig baits, fish those baits slower, you know, a weightless Senko, fish more methodical, get down through that grass, and you guys will pick up some giant bass. If you guys learned anything from this video, please give us a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to our channel. We do 3 videos a week to help you guys catch more and bigger bass. As always, guys, we appreciate you. Have a good one.